ISM report tonight. The data that decides $57 silver's next move. Tonight, a single report will be released, just a few numbers on a screen, but those numbers will decide whether silver holds or falls. Millions are watching the price. Almost no one is watching the real signal hidden underneath it, because the market is asking the wrong question, and by the time most people realize their mistake, the move will already be over. There is a floor beneath silver right now, and there is a ceiling above it. And tonight, one of them is about to break. The question is, which one? Welcome to John Ag, the channel where the numbers tell the story before the news does. Now, before we go any further, if you are new here, do this old friend a small favor. You know how it works. When a good neighbor moves in next door, you knock, you say hello, you don't wait to be asked twice. So knock on that subscribe button, say hello. It costs nothing, and it means everything to a channel like this one. And while you are here, tell us one thing in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from right now? A city, a country, just a name. It reminds everyone here that money moves the same way in every language. Now, let's begin. He is standing at his desk when the number flashes across the screen. Silver, $57.50, down almost 2% on the day, down 23% from where it stood just 4 weeks ago. For most people watching, that drop feels like a warning. It feels like something is broken, and when something feels broken, people run. But the serious investor does not run on feeling, he runs on facts. And the fact in front of him tonight is this. What is happening to silver right now is being misunderstood by almost everyone who owns it. To understand why, he does something the crowd never does. He looks backward before he looks forward. He remembers what happened in January. Back then, silver did not fall. It crashed. It fell from over $120 down into the 60s. That was a violent event. It was driven by forced selling, by exchanges demanding more money from traders, and by a sudden shock in the oil market that pushed everything into panic. People were not choosing to sell. They were being forced to sell. That is what a true collapse looks like. It is fast. It is emotional. It is out of control. But what he sees on his screen tonight is different. This is not January. This move, the slide from $75 down to $57, did not happen in a single day of terror. It happened slowly. Over 4 full weeks. Step by step, almost calmly, and that calmness is the clue. Because a market that falls slowly is not panicking. A market that falls slowly is deciding. He has a word for what is happening. He does not call it a collapse. He calls it a repricing. The difference between those two words is the difference between losing money and making it. A collapse means the reason to own the thing is gone. The foundation has cracked. The value has disappeared. When that happens, the price can fall to almost anything because nothing is holding it up. A repricing is something else entirely. A repricing means the reason to own the thing is still there, but the world has changed the price it is willing to pay for it, at least for now. The foundation is intact. The building still stands. Only the number on the tag has moved. And here is what separates the professional from the amateur tonight. The amateur sees the falling price and assumes the story is over. He assumes the demand for silver has died. He assumes he was wrong to ever believe in it. The professional asks a colder, sharper question. He asks, has anything real actually broken? Or has the market simply changed the price it will pay for something that is still valuable? That single question is the reason he is not selling in fear tonight, and it is the reason he is paying very close attention to what happens in the next few hours, because a report is coming, a manufacturing report. On the surface, it looks like ordinary economic paperwork. A few percentages, a headline number, some tables that most people will scroll past without a second thought. But those numbers carry the answer to his question. They will tell him whether the demand for silver is quietly holding firm underneath all this fear, or whether it is beginning to weaken in a way that would justify an even lower price. He knows the crowd will read only the headline. They will glance at one number, form an opinion, and move on. He also knows that the headline is not where the truth lives. The truth lives underneath it, in the details almost no one bothers to read, in 5 quiet measurements buried inside the report that reveal what the factories of an entire nation are actually doing, not what they are saying, but what they are doing. And so he waits, calm on the outside, fully alert underneath, because tonight is not about the price of silver. Tonight is about learning to read the machine that sets the price, the way the people who move billions have quietly learned to read it. He leans closer to the screen because now he must answer the hardest question of all. If silver is being repriced and not destroyed, then what is the real price? Where does the falling stop? Most people believe the answer is simple. They believe silver has one floor, one bottom, one line beneath which it cannot fall. But the professional knows a secret that the crowd does not. Silver does not have one floor, it has 2. And tonight, understanding the difference between those 2 floors is everything. The first floor is built from something solid, something real, something you can touch. It is built from the factories of the world, the machines, the wires, the panels, the cars, the buildings that need silver to function. This is industrial demand. And here the story is far stronger than the frightened crowd believes. He walks through it in his mind, sector by sector. The solar industry, for years the biggest buyer of silver, is changing. The newest solar panels are being designed to use less silver per panel, 15, even 20% less. And when the crowd hears that, they panic. Less silver used means less demand, they say. The story is dying. But then comes the first twist. Because while each panel now uses less silver, the number of panels being built is exploding. The world is installing far more solar than ever before. So when you do the honest math, less silver per panel, but far more panels, the total demand barely moves. What looked like a collapse is really just an industry growing up and learning to waste less. And that is not all. Something new has quietly appeared. Something that did not even exist at this scale a few years ago. Electric cars, each one carrying silver inside it, are being built by the millions. Giant data centers, the buildings that power artificial intelligence, are consuming silver in their cooling systems and their connectors. New phone networks across entire continents need silver to run. A whole new army of buyers has walked onto the field, just as the old buyers slowed down. So the first floor holds. The demand is not dying. It is simply changing its clothes. And this is where he pauses, because if the demand is holding, then the falling price makes no sense. Something else must be pushing silver down. Here comes the second twist, the one almost no ordinary investor ever sees. The second force is not a floor at all, it is a ceiling. And it is invisible. That ceiling is built from interest rates. He explains it to himself the way he would explain it to a young man just starting out. Silver pays you nothing. It sits in a vault. It earns no interest. It simply waits. Now, in a world where safe government bonds pay you almost nothing, waiting is easy. Silver looks attractive because the alternative is boring. But the world has changed. Today, those safe bonds are paying nearly 4.5%, real money, guaranteed, every year. And suddenly the big investors, the ones who move billions, face a cold choice. Why hold silver, which pays nothing and costs money to store, when they can hold a bond that pays them handsomely just to wait? That is the ceiling. It does not touch the factories. It does not touch demand. It presses down from above, purely through the world of money, quietly capping how high silver is allowed to rise. And now he sees the whole picture, clear and sharp. Silver is caught between two invisible forces, a floor of real demand holding it up from below, and a ceiling of high interest rates pressing it down from above. It is trapped between them. The falling price is not the death of demand. It is the ceiling winning out for now. He sits back, and a quiet understanding settles over him. The crowd is watching the wrong thing entirely. They are staring at the factories, asking if demand is broken, when the real battle is being fought somewhere else completely, in the world of interest rates, in the decisions of one powerful institution, an institution that meets, that speaks, that sets the cost of money for the entire planet, and whatever that institution decides next will decide whether the ceiling holds or finally lifts. His eyes narrow. To understand silver's next move, he must first understand them. He pulls out a blank sheet of paper and begins to draw a chain, not a chain of steel, a chain of cause and effect. Because the professional understands something the crowd never learns. The price of silver is not decided by silver at all. It is decided by a hidden chain of forces, each one pulling the next, stretching all the way back to a place most investors would never think to look. He writes the first link, silver. Then the second, interest rates. He already knows these two are tied together. High rates press down on silver like a heavy hand. But what decides the rates? He writes the third link, the Fed, the one institution that sets the cost of money for the entire world. When they hold rates high, the ceiling on silver stays low. When they finally let rates fall, the ceiling lifts and silver is free to rise. So the question becomes simpler and sharper. What makes the Fed act? What forces their hand? He writes the fourth link, and it surprises even him. Inflation. The Fed has one great enemy, rising prices. As long as prices keep climbing too fast, the Fed cannot lower rates. They are frozen, they must keep the pressure high, and as long as they keep the pressure high, the ceiling on silver stays exactly where it is. Now comes the twist that ties the whole world together. Because what drives inflation more than almost anything else? He writes the fifth link, and it is one word that seems to have nothing to do with silver at all, oil. When oil is expensive, everything becomes expensive. Trucks, factories, shipping, food, all of it. Expensive oil feeds inflation. Inflation freezes the Fed. The frozen Fed keeps rates high. High rates cap silver. The chain is almost complete. But there is one final link, the one that started everything. He writes it slowly. A narrow stretch of water on the other side of the world. The Strait of Hormuz. And here the story becomes almost unbelievable. Months ago, that narrow waterway, where much of the world's oil must pass, was choked shut by conflict. Oil could not flow. Prices exploded past $100. Inflation caught fire. And the Fed, staring at those rising prices, had no choice but to keep rates brutally high. That was the true reason silver's ceiling slammed down. But then, the second twist. The situation at that faraway strait began to heal. A fragile agreement was signed. The oil tankers, frozen for months, slowly began to move again. Oil prices started to fall from their terrifying highs. And for a moment, it seemed the whole chain was about to reverse. Falling oil, cooling inflation, a Fed finally free to cut rates, a ceiling about to lift, and silver about to fly. He almost believes it. But then he checks the details, and the details reveal the cruelest twist of all. The healing is real, but it is not finished. The tankers are moving again, yes, but they are carrying only a fraction of what they once did. Oil has fallen, yes, but it has not fallen far enough. Inflation has cooled, yes, but not enough to convince the Fed that the danger has truly passed. The chain is trying to reverse, and it is stuck halfway. That is the whole tragedy of silver at this moment. The world is almost free of the pressure, but not quite. The Fed is almost ready to ease, but not quite. The ceiling is almost ready to lift, but not quite. And almost is not enough to lift a price. So he returns finally to tonight, to the report that is coming, because that report measures the one thing that could tip this frozen chain in either direction, the health of the nation's factories. But he knows the trap waiting inside it. The crowd will read only the single headline number. They will see one figure, decide the story, and walk away satisfied. The professional will do the opposite. He will ignore the headline and dive beneath it into 5 hidden measurements buried in the report, 5 quiet numbers that reveal whether the factories are truly strong or only pretending to be. Because 2 reports can show the exact same headline and mean completely opposite things. And tonight, only one of those meanings will be true. He turns to the report itself, and he does what almost no one else will do tonight. He ignores the headline. The crowd will seize that single number the moment it appears. If it looks strong, they will cheer. If it looks weak, they will panic, but he knows the headline is a mask. The truth lives in 5 quiet numbers hidden beneath it. He lists them in his mind. New orders, the promises of future business, production, what the factories are building right now, prices paid, how much it costs them to build it, employment, whether they are hiring or quietly letting people go, and beneath all of it, the direction of the trend. Then he reveals the trap that will fool millions. 2 reports can carry the exact same headline number and mean opposite things. One might show strong new orders and busy factories, a sign of real strength. Another might show the same headline, but with orders drying up and hiring stopping, a sign of hidden decay, same face, opposite soul. The crowd will never know the difference. He will. And from these numbers, 3 futures open before him. 3 scenarios. 3 different destinies for silver. The first future is the quiet one. The factories hold steady. The Fed stays frozen but does not strike. Oil stays calm. In this world, silver does not crash and does not soar. It drifts, trapped between its floor and its ceiling, moving in a narrow range, somewhere between $57 and $65. Boring, stable, and by his measure, the most likely future of all. Roughly 6 chances in 10. But he does not stop there, because the professional never bets everything on the likely. The second future is the bright one. Here the factories weaken, the jobs numbers disappoint, fear of a slowdown spreads, and suddenly the Fed is forced to blink. Rates begin to fall, the ceiling lifts, and silver, freed at last, climbs back toward 70, even 75. The very weakness that scares the crowd becomes the fuel that lifts the price. A strange, cruel irony. Bad news for the economy becoming good news for the metal. He gives this future one chance in 4. And then comes the third future, the dark one. The one almost no silver owner is prepared for. In this world, the factories run hot. Prices climb again, inflation reawakens, and the Fed, instead of easing, does the unthinkable. It presses harder. Rates climb even higher, the ceiling drops lower, and silver breaks. It falls through 57, it tests 55, and if 55 gives way, there is nothing solid until the low 50s, perhaps lower. He marks these lines carefully because they are the battlefield. 57, the line being defended tonight. 55, the trapdoor. And far above, the moving averages sitting like a wall over the price, marking how far silver has fallen from its former strength. This third future is the least likely, perhaps 15 chances in 100, but he knows something painful about probability. Least likely does not mean impossible. And the disasters that ruin people are almost always the ones they told themselves could never happen. Now he sits in stillness, holding all 3 futures at once. And here he does the most disciplined thing of all. He refuses to guess. He does not pretend to know which future will arrive. He does not bet the house on a feeling. Instead, he holds the map, the floor, the ceiling, the three roads, and he watches the data decide. That is the final lesson. The amateur wants a prediction. The professional wants a framework. One gambles, the other prepares. And as the final seconds tick toward the report, his mind drifts to history. He thinks of the investors of 2008 who watched silver crash and believed the story was finished, right before it began one of the greatest climbs of their lifetime. He thinks of those in the 1970s who endured a brutal fall, sold in despair, and missed the surge that followed. In every case, the ones who survived were not the ones who predicted the future. They were the ones who understood what had actually broken and what had not. Tonight, silver's demand has not broken. Its deficit has not vanished. Only its premium has been suspended. The floor is still there. The question is simply, who will be standing on it when the ceiling finally lifts?